My name is Ayaana Noman, and I'm the published author of 13 different works. And over the years, I've spent countless hours writing stories and crafting emotions and characters that go through complex journeys and they confront impossible choices. But today, I want to talk to you about something far greater than just my own words. I want to talk to you about the power of storytelling in itself and how fiction, in all of its forms, whether through scripts, cartoons, TVs, and books and comics, not only shapes the words on the pages, but the reality that we live in today too. Now, I'd like you to think back to your childhood. Imagine yourself curled up in front of the TV, maybe watching a cartoon you weren't supposed to be, or reading a book late at night under the covers with a flashlight because bedtime was 9 p.m. and, well, rules are rules, but we're always going to break them. But for me, that was Family Guy. Yeah, I know it doesn't sound good at all, but I would stay up way too late watching episodes my mom definitely did not approve of. I'm sorry. She once even threatened to call the police if I didn't turn it off. And at the time, I thought she was being dramatic. Like, come on, it's just a talking dog and a homicidal baby. But maybe she had a point. And they're not exactly role models per se. And then there was the SpongeBob phase. I know, yeah. I had a huge crush on SpongeBob SquarePants. Yes, a sponge. A sponge who lived in a pineapple under the sea. I even had a little SpongeBob doll that doubled as a backpack. I'd grab its arms and we'd spin in circles in the living room like we were in a rom-com. And that was the peak romance for me. Oh my god, Mr. SpongeBob really set the bar high for me. Now, I know it sounds ridiculous, like what is she even talking about? Family Guy SpongeBob. And it is. But even that proved something to me. That stories, no matter how absurd, ridiculous, or fantastical, shape the world. And apparently who we want to marry at 6 years old. Those silly cartoons, they were more than just noise on a screen. They taught me about friendship, perseverance, consequences, and how to make sense of a world that didn't always make sense. They weren't just entertainment, they were lessons in disguise. And that is the thing about storytelling. It's not always about dragons or dystopians and love triangles. Sometimes it's about a quiet way a character grows and how they fail or how they simply forgive. Stories are a mirror reflecting who we are. They are a lens helping us see the world in new ways, and they are a bridge connecting us to people, places, and perspectives we may never otherwise encounter. Think about it. How many times has a story stayed with you longer than the last page? How many times has a book or a movie made you feel something so deeply that you just couldn't explain why? That is not accidental. That is the power of storytelling. When I write, I don't try to create perfect characters. I write messy ones, complicated ones, people who fail, people who make mistakes, people who fall in love at the wrong time, people who hold grudges for too long, people who want to change but don't know how. And in doing that, I hope that readers see a little bit of themselves in my books, because that is what fiction does. It teaches us about the characters, but it also teaches us about ourselves. Think about the last time you cried over a character's death, or felt angry at the injustice in the fictional world, or laughed out loud in the middle of the room because the dialogue was just that good. Those emotions were not fake. They were real, and you felt them, which is why the impact is even more real. We often separate fiction and reality like they're opposites. But fiction is reality, just filtered through a metaphor, through imagination and emotion. And after all, opposites attract. In fact, fiction tells the truth far better than facts ever could, because it lets us feel the truth, not just understand it. And fiction isn't just about feeling, it's about doing. Stories have sparked revolutions. They've challenged injustices, they've flipped changes and cultural norms, and given us a chance to hear the unheard. Think about Uncle Tom's Cabin, which helped ignite the abolishment movement in the 1800s, or the Hunger Games, which gave a rise to young generations to talk about oppression and power. Fiction shows us not just the world as it is, but as the world as it could be. And sometimes, even the world tries to silence or shrink people. Stories remind us of our power. Now, let's talk about representation for a second. Growing up, it wasn't always easy to find stories that reflected my identity. In fact, the person who I feel like represented me the most was probably all the rich bald people. Why? Because they don't have hair and you can't see mine. That reflected people who looked like me and who believed like me or struggled like me. And when you don't see yourself in these stories and you just see these bald people that clearly we're not connecting like that, you begin to wonder if your story is even worth telling. But fiction can change that. Every time a writer chooses to tell a story that typically isn't told, it cracks the door open for someone else to walk through. And that is why I write. Not because I love it, although I do, but because I believe stories can change lives. They can challenge assumptions, break barriers, and bring people together in ways nothing else can. Every time someone tells me, Ayaana, your book made me cry, or I saw myself in that character, or that story really helped me get through something, I feel incredibly honored, because that's when I know it wasn't just a book. It was a mirror, a lens, and a bridge. It was the thread and the fabric of someone else's life. Now, let me take a quick moment to talk about something that often gets overlooked: the joy in fiction. We spend a lot of time talking about those serious stories, the angsty ones where everyone dies, or like Game of Thrones where someone's dying every episode. But stories that make us laugh, that make us smile, that help us escape, they are just as vital. The world can be a heavy place, and sometimes the most revolutionary thing a story can do is give someone a break, a breath, a reason to keep going. Whether that's the ridiculous cartoons or romantic comedy with SpongeBob, joy is not always a luxury. It is a lifeline. So yes, I will probably say my childhood crush, SpongeBob, helped shape who I am. The talking sponge, the pineapple, the jellyfishing net, those were stories that made me feel safe, curious, and oddly inspired. And that is the other magic of fiction. It meets us exactly where we are. It doesn't judge, it doesn't lecture, it whispers to us in a way where no one else can hear and only we understand. And as we grow, these stories stay with us. They change meaning over time. What was once funny becomes profound. What was once confused becomes clear. And what once entertained us becomes part of our personal mythology. So now, as we come to the end of this conversation, I want you to imagine yourself again, but this time, not as a child on the carpet in front of a TV, but as the person you are now, with all your memories, your fears, your dreams, your questions. And I want you to remember, the stories you've heard, the stories you've loved, they are not just passing moments. They are the architecture of your inner world. They are how you see and make sense of your life, your relationships, and even your future. They are, in the end, your truth. So the next time someone tells you fiction isn't real, it's just stories, they don't matter, it's just words on a page, remember this: stories build us, stories heal us, and stories change us. And if you're seriously lucky, they might even make you fall in love with a sponge. Thank you.